Let's go to the nightcap, the last game, of course, future SEC football program, the University of Texas. They are officially back, of course, playing the Washington Huskies, 4.5-point favorite in the Sugar Bowl in the college football playoff semifinal. Obviously, we could have an all-SEC national championship with Texas and Alabama. We could have an all-Big Ten national championship with Washington and Michigan. Washington is a tough team to figure out here. They are one of the lowest-rated teams from a recruiting average standpoint to ever make the playoff. Ironically, their average recruiting class over the last 5 years, which certainly doesn't take into account the portal and all that other stuff, 34th in the nation, identical to that of TCU. All season long, we have explained, or at least I have had the theory, that Washington is TCU. Close games the entire season. Historically great quarterback. Really brilliant offensive-minded head coach. Purple. All the similarities, and now, of course, their average recruiting ranking over the last 5 seasons, identical to that of TCU, 34th in the nation. Texas, number 5, top 5 recruiting class, which is what you have to be to win the national championship. Only one team has ever won the national title in the playoff era with an average recruiting class outside of the top 10. That was Clemson in 2016 with Deshaun Watson. This Texas team is in the range. They have the talent. They've got the quarterback. They've got the offensive scheme. They've got the defensive line. But Washington has this thing that TCU had last year that got them into the national championship game. I have honestly no clue what's going to happen in this football game. I cannot wait for the Sugar Bowl.
I think I can tell you what's going to happen, or at least it's what I hope will happen. I hope it's an awesome game because I think the potential is there for it. I know Texas is favored, but that plays right into what Washington has had to deal with all season. Sort of disrespect that their defense isn't, this defense is going to cause them to lose a game at some point. No, all they do is go out and win 13-0. They beat Oregon twice, and they're in the college football playoff with a quarterback that finished, the top 3 of Heisman voting. So I think the disrespect card can certainly be played here by Washington. And all it would take with Michael Penix to get hot in 2 games and their defense to do exactly what they did down the stretch is make a timely stop or 2, and they're winning the national championship. I think they can win it all if they get by Texas in the college football playoff. So
what a story if Washington wins the national championship.
I don't think it's that far-fetched considering the firepower that this team has. But
who's the better offensive mind? And are they 2 of the best in the country right now? Kalen Deboer and Steve Sarkisian?
I would probably go with Sarkisian, but yes, they are 2 of the best in college football without question. I think that brings me to kind of think what we should expect. I think we should expect a lot of points. I think this will be kind of a higher scoring game. The other one's probably going to be a little bit more low scoring between Alabama and Michigan, but I think this could be a fun kind of back and forth game. You've got Penix, his receivers with Odunze, McMillan, and all those guys. They're going to move the ball against a Texas team that has struggled to give up big plays in the passing game. They've had some injuries there, but has been an issue this season. I love the matchup in the line of scrimmage. How is Washington going to block Murphy and Sweat? Those 2 defensive linemen that are massive, and they're going to be hard to move. Even if they don't get a sack or tackle for loss, it's just their pressure could be really disruptive to the whole operation of Washington offensively. And the other factor is, who is getting touchdowns and who is kicking field goals? Because we've seen Texas has had real trouble this year scoring in the red zone. Washington does a great job. When they get into the red zone, they score touchdowns. So I think in a game where something small could add up, as funny as it sounds, like red zone, touchdown percentage, and turnovers could play a huge role in what happens.
Finishing drives, points per trip inside the 40. There's also an element that's like the opposite of the Washington factor here, which is intangibles, which is like they just figure out ways to win. Their offense doesn't score a touchdown against Arizona State, but a pick 6 does. I thought Ryan Grubb's game plan, the offensive coordinator for Washington against Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game, was absolutely brilliant. It was run the football with Dillon Johnson on the edges, get to the outside. If you watch that game, super creative with how they got the football to the edge of the Oregon defense. I think you have to do that again because Texas, you cannot run right at those 2 defensive tackles. I don't think you can do that. So Texas has to know that. Washington has to know that. What is the counterpunch in the pregame strategy? I think that is what's going to be really interesting. And frankly, the intangible thing, as I was saying, it's hard to, this is not fair to Texas, to Steve Sarkisian, to Quinn Ewers, or to any of the players on that Texas team. There's still this weird Texas energy. You know what I mean? Like there's this like on paper, Texas should win the football game. On paper, Texas is way better defensively. On paper, Texas is far more talented 1-85 by a mile. Like there is like if this was Alabama, if the name was Alabama or Georgia or Ohio State, I think they'd be an 8-point favorite or a 9-point favorite. But I think there's this weird like, well, do we really buy into Texas yet? Are they good enough to handle this moment? Being on this stage. They have not been on this stage since 2009. It's been a long time for Texas since they've been here. Here's the other thing. I have a bunch of friends of mine texting me who are diehard Texas fans. Like, what is taking so long? And I'm like, guys, this is how the football playoff works. Welcome to the party, Texas. Like, they just don't, it's so new to them. And again, not like Washington's been there a ton, but they've been to the playoff before.
Yeah.
So to me, there's like the gravity of the situation I don't think is going to affect Washington. It certainly didn't affect Texas in the Big 12 championship game, especially in the first half, where they dropped 49 and like 500 yards of offense and like a half of football. But this is different. You've had a month to think about it. You've had a month of people patting you on the back. I don't know. That's the one weird intangible factor here is because if Texas plays its best game and Washington plays its best game, I think it's a great game. It's a shootout, but Texas wins. But is there this element of like, and again, maybe we shouldn't doubt Sarkisian. And this is of all the things we could say about like, there's things about Steve Sarkisian in his past you can have some fun with as a punchline. You know, the way things ended at USC with personal addiction problems. You know, he left Washington and Chris Peterson did a better job. Steve Sarkisian against his former team. Like there's a lot of stuff. But like all he's done in 3 years is remove the noise around the Texas program, get him to 12-1 into the playoff and a Big 12 championship. Like immediately. In 3 years, he's gotten Texas back to where they belong. And so part of me is like, should I even be doubting him at all? But there's that little kernel of like, oh, it's still Texas. They could screw it up.
It's whether it's fair or not. I think there will be a contingent of media or just other pundits, fans, whatever you want to say, that are probably just like, yeah, Texas is back. Sure. Like we'll believe it when we see it.
Right.
That means
Even though
winning
they're
the national championship.
even though they just won a Big 12 and beat Alabama on the road
Yeah.
and they're 12-1. Like, yeah, I agree.
I think the flip side argument would be they are already like in that they're a totally different program because
Right.
look at how they went on the road and beat Alabama. They
Right.
won the Big 12 championship game. Just
Right.
look at the roster talent the last couple of years. So if they lose this game, I don't think it's an indictment of the Texas is back whole conversation, how it could be really negative for them. I think this is just a really good Washington team that going to give them a lot of trouble. Also should note that Dillon Johnson probably had one of the quietest like 1,000-yard seasons I can remember in the Pac-12. So looking forward to this. This will be a high scoring game.
And he did it against Oregon hurt too. And to your point, it's very fair to point out. I don't if Washington wins, I don't think it's because Texas chokes. I think it's because Washington is a worthy team that is undefeated for a reason and that proved a lot of people like me wrong throughout the course of the year and continues to prove people like me wrong. So I don't want to sit here and sound like it's not that Washington wouldn't deserve credit. They absolutely deserve credit if they win the game. I think they will have earned it. I think they're good enough to win the game. I mean, I'm gonna take Texas, I guess, but I don't know. I think this is the healthiest Washington is going to be all season. Some of their defensive issues were because they were banged up all year. Great safeties, now fully healthy. Brandon Trice, fully healthy. Defensive edge, fully healthy. Dillon Johnson, fully healthy. Like, I just think Washington's going to be at its peak. So it kind of comes down to which team can execute. And I know that sounds cheesy and cliche, but I think they're both really great offenses about execution, and whichever quarterback executes better. I don't know. Penix has been more consistent. So
yeah, I think the word timely almost like sums up like the way I think this game could be won or lost. And we talked about it earlier, 3 versus 7. Who's giving up a big play? Who isn't? Who's got the most havoc plays, whether it's a sack, a tackle for loss, a forced turnover. In a game like this, maybe special teams, like a big return or something, it feels like 1 or 2 big plays might decide it. I love the fact Washington's defense has been so timely down the stretch. Muhammad, ZTF, Trice, they've all stepped up. I just think Texas is just a little bit better here.
We're both taking Texas.
I think it's going to be a heck of a semifinal, but give me Texas.
You got the Washington shirt on too. All right.